Welcome, everybody. Appreciate your joining us today. My name is Justin Seibert. I'm very, very excited to present this particular webinar or co-present with the fabulous Jordan Watson. I'll introduce momentarily. If you've been in business for any period of time, you are very familiar with the what should be synergy between sales and marketing, but a lot of times is lacking. And so it ends up being, in the worst case scenarios, a finger pointing exercise of, well, marketing did their job or sales did their job, but at the end of the day, not getting results that you're looking for and you're not sure where it's broken. So we're looking to bring it all together today in terms of digital marketing, specifically in terms of Google advertising, to give you a little more confidence in plans moving forward so that you can get the absolute most out of your advertising efforts. To start off, I want to show you some numbers here. This is kind of the credibility slide. Why should you be listening to us? In this particular case, 30, 1,000, 713, and 300. If we look at those numbers, this is just one example of what we're able to produce. So 30 straight months of improvements, over 2.5 straight years of every month being the best month they've ever had for one particular client, in particular with Google Ads. Led to 1,000% increase of leads while we were working with this particular client, and a 713% increase in opportunities, and boiling all the way down to a 300% increase in sales. So quadrupling sales over this period of time, sales that are directly attributable to Google Ads. And with that, like I said, my name is Justin Seibert. I'm the president of DOM. Happy to join you here. I've been working in digital marketing since 2001. Founded this agency in 2006. Give you a little more information about us momentarily. But very excited to have Jordan Watson, who I mentioned previously, joining us here today. I've been very fortunate to work with Jordan, I think maybe for 5 years now, on different projects and with a lot of different companies. And I will say to you sincerely that when you think about people that are in charge of growth and getting things done and having vision, because sometimes you can have the vision of where you want to go, but you lack on the follow through. Sometimes you have the follow through, but you lack on the vision. And Jordan does both of those things as well as anybody that I've worked with. More background on him. He's a growth executive. He's been doing this for 15 years, very heavily involved in the healthcare field. And what he would say, I think, and I'll give him a chance to jump in if I say anything wrong, but is about driving profitable growth for companies. And he's primarily works anywhere from mid-size in the mid-market space to new opportunities, folks that are looking for their go-to markets. Most recently, a chief growth officer at a national multi-site healthcare brand, PE-backed. And that's where he's really been involved. A lot of PE-backed, a lot of venture capital-backed, even working with private investors in terms of consulting and what can he do to help them grow their brands? What can he help them do to develop a go-to market strategy? And at the end of the day, that go-to market strategy, I know some people get soft on it in terms of, well, let's just get a launch. That's not it with Jordan. It's about how do we actually make the needle move? How do we get a profit, and how can we get there as quickly as possible? So I couldn't be any more pleased than to bring Jordan to you today. So Jordan, thanks for joining us, and I'm looking forward to hearing you momentarily.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the intro, Justin. I'm really looking forward to this. Welcome, everybody.
Cool. Thank you. Very quick background on DOM. I'm required by law to share these things with you. You can check us out, learn more about us at directom.com if you'd like. Some information about us. I point out that we are in Google's Managed Agency program, makes us one of the top 200 partners in the entire world. So we've been doing Google Ads for a very long time. We work with clients all over the world in a number of different spaces, dozens of different industries. If you want to check us out, I'd encourage you to check us out specifically on Clutch or G2. But that's over 80 reviews of what people have said about working with us, what they liked, what they didn't like, and you can hear directly from our clients' mouths. And just a special offer for everybody that if you want to scan this QR code, it'll take you to a page where you can sign up for a free audit, and then we will actually go through that. We'll, if you put in your information, we'll have a pre-call with you. We'll get a little bit more information. We'll talk about how we can get access to your account. And then we have a live human being, a strategist with years of experience, go through it, find out what's working, where do we see some opportunities, and then we'll walk that through with you on a follow-up call to show you what we're seeing and where we think those growth opportunities look like. All right, with that out of the way, let's jump into it. And the first part of the presentation, where I'll be talking, and we're just going to go into Google Ads, and then we'll bring Jordan in to talk about the sales side of things to bring it all around. So why do we care about search engines? Just to make sure we're on the same page. It's about intent. So we're actively reaching people who are looking for what you are selling. So it makes it fundamentally different than any other form of advertising or marketing, all of which can have the proper role in your total marketing portfolio. But with search, we know we're reaching people who are actively looking. And if you've seen a screen like this probably a gajillion times in your life at this point, but if you've studied this, and you probably just picked up this on your own, but as somebody who's been working in this since 2001, notice that those ads keep taking up a bigger and bigger and bigger portion of the screen. You're going to see that, and especially with some changes Google's making to the results that it's going to be presenting that we anticipate are going to be happening next month. All those organic listings here where we see Imagination, if I'm saying that correctly, at the bottom of the screen here, are going to continue to be pushed down because you're going to take up as much space as you're seeing right now with the ads. And then Google's going to start giving more and more of its own results before you even get to any of the organic results. So advertising, Google's going to be putting more and more emphasis on that in the results. So it's going to be a bigger part of your strategy moving forward. So we have search, and everybody understands that we're reaching people when they are actively looking for what you're offering. But Google knew a long time ago that if it was just reliant on search, then it was going to have a hard time growing. That's why they put in several $billion in their investment of YouTube over a decade ago, because they knew that that was limitless. It's why they built up their display network, why they launched Gmail, all ways that they can continue to sell ads. And with that, it's not just that they have more inventory to sell, it's that they have a lot more data as people move through their ecosystem. And the two big pieces, the two primary campaigns that they offer that allow you to leverage this machine learning, and we'll talk about both of them, are Performance Max or PMax. That was one that they launched a couple years ago, and it really in the beginning was just about replacing shopping campaigns, or that was where its biggest benefit was. And then Demand Gen. So this was a campaign type that they launched last month, and really it's to replace Discover campaigns and meant to be sort of a counterpart to PMax or Performance Max, where it allows you to do some different things where it can be a little bit better for lead generation. And if we look at both of these types on the channels, somewhat similar, but Performance Max will also show on search in addition to YouTube, in addition to Discover, in addition to Gmail. And from a targeting perspective, understand that you are really turning things over to Google with Performance Max. You're not going to necessarily get all of the data back, and you're not going to have as many controls. You can give them ideas of what you want to do. You can influence what the Google machine hive mind is going to do for you. But on Demand Gen campaigns, you're actually going to have a little bit more flexibility with that. You can target specific audience segments more deeply with everything you're doing on that front. So both types can be good for you. Performance Max, again, sometimes people think of in terms of shopping campaigns. We'll talk through what some of the downsides of Performance Max for lead generation can be, but both of these can work. And again, their benefit is that they are leveraging Google's machine learning to find you the right person. And again, it might be some of those search signals tied in, but not necessarily while they're searching in that particular moment. I see some questions popping in. Please ask at any time. We're going to collect those. If the question is, hey, Justin, you have a bunch of marbles in your mouth and we can't understand you, we'll go ahead and have somebody jump in so that we can repeat the information. Same thing with Jordan. Otherwise, we're going to try to take those at the end when we do have a live Q&A session. So please continue to ask questions. From a targeting option standpoint, what are some of those things that you can do? Well, Google, as you've seen them talk about moving beyond the cookies into a cookieless world, really want you to leverage your first-party data as much as possible. So one of the ways that they're going to do that is that you can upload lists. They can be pulled from your analytics. They can be pulled from a set of emails, even non-email associated data that you can load up into Google. And you can do things like customer match while you are targeting those specific people. Custom affinity allows you to target people who have visited certain sites in the past. And you can't say only those sites, but you can give Google a list of sites like your competitors or like those in your industry. And then you can target people who have been to those sites or been to similar sites like that. You can also use custom intent. So how do you reach people based on searches they've done? This can be a really, really good signal. If you're in a very highly competitive industry where maybe you're paying $20, $50, $100 per click, and that just really won't work with your budget and for the volume that you're looking for, custom intent can help you reach those people after the fact. So you're not getting them right in the immediacy, right when they're looking for those answers, but it can be a nice way to split the baby there. Also, site interaction, you're probably used to at this point retargeting, or Google calls it remarketing. How do you reach people who have been to your site and interacted with it in a certain way? You can do that through site interaction with engagement. And then finally, one other way to look at is in market. Depending on the industry that you're in, Google can help you target people who have been searching very recently within the last 7 days for something, anything from flights to wealth management. There's a lot of different categories that you can play with where you can reach those people who have been in market very recently for those areas. Video. And I promise you, I am not putting this on here just because every time we talk with our Google reps, they want us to talk about video. I actually believe it can play a very valuable part of what you're doing. And that's because you get to tell the story. You get to show exactly in a very visual way what you're doing and how you can help the people and who are the people that you can help. It builds up your brand. It can make sure that there's a lot more awareness of who you are in the markets that you're trying to reach. We'll see people in particular maybe go heavier with video when they enter into maybe a new country that aren't as familiar with them, and maybe they're not going as heavy in the current markets. Is just one example. It's very, very inexpensive. Literally, you might pay 1, 2, 3, 4 cents per view. And I'm going to encourage you. Some people don't like this. I'm going to strongly encourage you to consider these skippable ads. And you might say, Justin, I get it, but if I'm going to put all this effort into videos, I would much rather have people watch the whole thing. And I hear you. That's going to be a lot more expensive for you to be able to do when you can do the skippable ads. If the person skips and they don't watch the entire ad, or at least 30 seconds of it, if it's longer than 30 seconds, you don't pay anything. And my favorite example of this, we were out in Google. I'm still bemused by the fact that they shared this with us from Google. We're at an event in Mountain View, and they talked about Geico. And Geico very early on saw this opportunity. And what they did was they would create 6 seconds of commercial, the amount of time that you had to watch it. And then when that commercial was done, that message was done, the 6 seconds, it went to a black screen. And so what they were trying to do was make sure that they got all of their impactful information up front and then lead people to believe that their video was actually over and try to force them into skipping so they can make their dollars go a lot further. But what you'll see with video, you won't see in most cases, it have a big lift on your actual conversions. I don't expect you're going to see that in terms of actual quality leads directly from those video campaigns. But what you will start to see, if you're effective with it, you have good messaging, is it's going to help your other campaigns perform. So you should see your cost per lead come down, as well as you should see that your total volume of leads are going to increase when you can allocate a portion of your budget towards YouTube. And what you're charged with, if you're listening to this video, just to some degree at least, is how do you make your dollars work harder with what you're doing? And at the end of the day, when you run advertising campaigns on Google Ads or other platforms, there's 2 competing factors that we're looking at. And the first is scale, right? How do we get you as many leads as possible? But if you say, hey, yeah, if you give me $10 million this month, I can get you a ton of leads. That might not be the budget that everybody's working with. And so you're also competing against the efficiency of your ad spend. So what's that cost per lead? Or we'll talk about some other metrics as well. What's that cost per lead? Because at the end of the day, you might say, well, I can get you a $2 cost per lead, but I have to do it in this very specific way, and I can only get you 2 leads per month. So that doesn't do you any good either. So it's at the end of the day, how do you strike the balance between that scale, that lift that you're looking for, and that efficiency of your dollars? And when we think about how do we stretch those dollars, I'm of the belief that we're currently in a recession, but whether you think we're in a recession or we're heading to one, that's where the market is heading. That's why you saw a lot of private equity-backed companies started slashing their budgets at the end of last year, the beginning of this year, and you're seeing that happen in the general market more and more. Also understand that Google ad prices are not immune to inflation. You're seeing those costs just to get in the game continue to increase. So even if you just want to stay the same next year, not even grow, you just want to stay the same, understand you're going to have to put another 5%, another 10%, another 20% into it just to tread water. Now, Google's making sure that that floor remains for where you need to be. And I would also say that it was really Google Ads when it first came out, totally the great equalizer. You could get in with very, very small budgets. You can still do that in some cases, depending on the industry, depending on geographic reach that you're going for. But as a general rule of thumb, what we're saying these days, because of the way the system is set up, because of the results that we're seeing, generally speaking, you need to have a budget of at least $5,000 per month. And so we'll manage campaigns, accounts that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. We'll manage some that are smaller on that front, but really that $5,000, if you're not going to be able to put that much in, again, happy to talk with you, give you feedback based on your specific situation. But as a general barometer, that's where you need to be to have success in Google these days, at a minimum. Finally, want to share a few growth tips for you. And number one, we want to consolidate as many campaigns as possible. That didn't used to be the way that we looked at things. So how can we keep all of that data consolidated into just a few campaigns to give Google's machines more learning to go out and find people who are like those people? And we still need to keep some things broken out, like branded versus non-branded search. But if we can combine things, we want to do that. The other note, please make sure that you're giving these campaigns time. Gone are the days where you can run campaigns and then it's not working. A few hours later, you can make major changes to it. If you really want to have success with it, generally speaking, and it does depend on volume, but you probably need to give a new campaign 2 weeks before making major changes to it. Doesn't mean you can't tweak along the way. If it's a big volume campaign, maybe it's 40 to 50 conversions, maybe you can do that in a few days. But what we'll say to people when you're going to launch these new types of campaigns that aren't search campaigns, if you're not willing to give it that time, just keep the money in your pocket. Also, critical importance is making sure that you are getting your CRM data, like HubSpot, tied into your account, because Google assumes that any conversion, when you just say, hey, it's a lead, somebody fills out a form, Google's going to say that, hey, that's a great lead. Let's go get more of those types of leads. And then that machine learning will try to get you into a death spiral. It doesn't try to, but that's the end effect. This is my picture. Thank my design team. We did our best to try to find the Grim Reaper throwing a spiral with a football. This is what we could come up with. But if Google doesn't know and it thinks every lead is good, it's going to keep going and getting you more of those junk leads that come in. So again, we can tie in that CRM and understand that Google actually has some native plugins or native connections with HubSpot, with Salesforce, Marketo, and a few other campaigns. And if you don't have those, you can tie in different things using a Zap through Zapier. Always make sure you're testing. You can do that in many different ways with your landing pages, with your calls to action, with your messaging. But look at everything. The example I like to give is a client came to us before they were a client several years ago. They were a military defense lawyer, and they were advertising on DOHA, which made sense. It's the Defense Office of Hearings and Appeals. So if somebody was looking for going to court, they needed help, they'd want to show up. But DOHA means many, many different things. For example, it is the capital of gutter. And so with that, when we audited their account, we found that they spent over $10,000 in straight up Arabic searches. Literally things we throw through Google Translate would come back with best falafel shop in Doha. So make sure you're always testing everything you're doing. AI is a big topic right now. Google, you're going to see a lot more of those tools. It can really help you build ad assets, especially for image and video, please check those out. But outside of that, look at what you can do for your ad writing. Happy to talk through more of this in the Q&A section as well. But it can help you build a lot of different things. Just understand that you need the human in the loop piece of it as well. If you're AI can only take you so far. It's only going to get you 50 to 80, 85% of the way there, depending on how well and how comfortable you are using it. You still need that human to get you the rest of the way. And then personal passion of mine, if you are able to sell outside of your borders, please consider doing that. Some tips. The keyword language doesn't necessarily need to match the ad language, but the ad language has to match the website language. And if you don't have a foreign language website, one that's fully translated, you can actually create just a translated landing page. Just be sure that if you do that, the person is going to expect that you can communicate back with them in that same language, and you want to make sure that you're able to do so with your follow-up. You may also want to consider lowering your bids or even excluding full countries. Sometimes when you start running a global campaign, you can see certain countries like India or Pakistan run through your budget very quickly just because of volume. And in the beginning, this is different than we would have said a few years ago. Make sure that you're grouping countries together as much as you can, especially if English is that language or English is a common business language for your industry. Also encourage, this isn't really a Google ad thing specifically, but utilize outside sources like the U.S. Commercial Service and state economic development agencies that have a lot of programs for you that are free, don't cost you anything, and are set up just to help U.S. companies export for our U.S. Attendees on this webinar. I'll also point out this particular tool. If you want to click on this, and you'll get a recording later where you'll be able to click on it and see this URL. This will take you out to a market diversification tool that the U.S. Commercial Service has put together. So if you want to see what the demand looks like for your products or your services in any particular country, you can do this to get some information, again, directly from the U.S. government. Finally, in terms of measuring results, we're going to break it down into two areas. So the first is high level. If you're a CMO or if you're in charge of revenue, return on ad spend obviously is the best thing that you can do. But you want to look for people or look at leads throughout the funnel. So what is our cost per MQL? What's our cost for sales accepted lead, for opportunity, for closed one? And you can do that very easily if you are able to tie your CRM into the ad account. Again, how much total volume are you getting? And if you are running demand gen campaigns, this is very exciting. You're able to run and get measurement regarding brand lift. So are people now searching for your brand more often? Search lift, what does that search volume look like? Conversion lift, are you getting more conversions in your other campaigns based on what you're doing in your demand gen campaigns? And then one that gets slept on a lot that's been around for a long time are auction insights on search campaigns. So it'll look something like this, where you can see who are the people that are advertising most on your keyword set. When you do that, sometimes you can notice new competitors coming in that you weren't aware that were creeping up on you. Now, if you're an actual practitioner, we want to look at all those things I just mentioned, but you can also dive in to some other areas. What are you paying per click? What's the quality score, which impacts the cost per click? Your impression share, especially on a branded campaign, you might want that to be 99% plus. And then just make sure that you're breaking down by buckets. So I would highly recommend that if you are doing branded search, you would have different goals for that than you would for non-branded search, than you would for retargeting, than you would for other types of campaigns. And with that, I will turn it over. And Jordan, if you're able to hop on, the audience would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Can everyone hear me okay? Justin, can you hear me? Just making sure. Great. Well, that was excellent. And what we're going to do now is talk about all of that volume that all that work is going to create. How do you build a sales organization that can capitalize on that? And then how do you build a united sales and marketing organization that continues to optimize and work in a collaborative way and in tandem to generate as much volume as possible and move it all the way through to the bottom of your funnel and ultimately conversion. So on the next slide, and Justin's going to advance for me here. So here's our agenda. And I had a great mentor of mine many years ago that guided me to focus on really three big areas. And so whenever I work with a go-to-market team or whenever I jump into working with a company, these are the three areas that we really focus on: systems, performance, conditions, and talent. And so when we think about systems, Justin was already talking about it a little bit. How does your technology stack enable your sales and marketing teams to drive high velocity performance? Is the system actually an impediment to that? Right? Are your teams having to work harder? So that's a primary question that we look at in that section. In the performance conditions, there's a variety of areas that we look at, but some of the key questions that we're looking to answer are: how do you set up an org structure that is able to scale with the volume that you're looking for? So if you've got these growth goals, how do we set up that organization to really support that well? How do you create an operating procedure between your sales and marketing functions and also within your sales organization to really unite this team? And how do you create a metric oriented culture and optimize based on performance data at every level of the funnel? And then how do you ensure that your sales organization is driving high level conversion rate performance and effectively managing leads? So those are some of the things that we're looking at in performance conditions. And then also the talent that you put into those performance conditions, right? So how do you hire, develop, and retain the best sales and marketing organization? So we're gonna move through the rest of this presentation organized in that way. On the next slide, we've got our systems, our technology stack. And again, Justin was speaking about this already, but one of the biggest things that I see right out of the gate is this is the foundation for how these teams are going to work together. And often the system is broken or it's disjointed, it's not giving you good information, it's not bringing these teams together. So, what you want to do is you want to look to build a technology stack that really equips the teams with a variety of different capabilities, right? So some of them are multiple channel entries and automated lead scoring. So, we're generating a lot of this volume. How can we funnel it? How can we prioritize it? How can we understand what's most likely to convert, right? If you can start to create automated lead scoring and different pathways for people to enter your sales organization for leads to come in, that's going to help you be more effective in managing the volume. Your sales engagement tools with email automation, cadence management, and outbound dialers. This is about efficiency and scale. As you think about, I've got thousands of leads now coming in, and I've got a small group of representatives, right? How can I maximize my ability to reach all those people? Well, there's a lot of technology out there that allows you to put people in seats and create automated cadences to manage leads in different ways. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Once you get responses on these leads, a staged and segmented sales process that's tailored by persona and lead score and channel type. So you can load that into your systems so that it guides your teams on how to work these leads, how to think about each persona that's coming in, how to think about the buyer's journey based on the channel that they came from and the stage that they're in. And we have later a section on that I'm going to talk about on that component. A phone system. So if you're generating a lot of phone leads, again, something that I see is maybe there's 3 or 4 different phone systems in the organization, or there's no phone system, or it's not integrated with your CRM, right? And so there's a lot of information that you're losing there, the ability to call coach, the metrics that you're tracking in your call centers and your contact centers. You got to make sure that that phone system is integrated with your CRM and providing you with great capabilities to call, coach, and track data. And then you've got nurture campaigns. So, how's your technology stack allowing you to nurture leads that fall out of the funnel, right? Or while they're advancing through the sales process, how can you be nurturing them towards closing? Does your technology stack allow you to do that in an automated way? And then all the information you're going to get out of that, right? All the measurables of your sales organization, of also how the campaigns are performing so that you can go bring the marketing team in and give them visibility into that. If you've got an integrated system and technology stack, you're going to be able to have a rich data environment that you can optimize and drive action based on the data that you're seeing. So you want to make sure that these are fully integrated. It increases selling time and decreases manual data entry. Some of the companies that I've had the opportunity to work with were in the world of working in their teams were working in 3 or 4 different systems, right? And so there was a lot of swivel chairing going on, a lot of manual transfer of information, right? That can really decrease the efficiency It decreases the selling time your teams have. There's data integrity problems that can happen there, so you may not make the best decisions, right? So if we can work towards integrating all these systems and achieve that, you're gonna really see some lift in your performance. So there's a lot of tools out there to help. Salesforce has got a lot within, but there's also Justin was already talking about HubSpot marketing platforms. Some of these sales engagement platforms like SalesLoft and others outside of Salesforce can help as well. Um, okay, so on the next slide, what we've got is we're moving towards performance conditions. So one of the first things we think about in performance conditions is, again, a very foundational piece is org structure. So you've got your systems and now you've got your org structure. So you want to establish an org structure that's set up to scale with the forecasted or budgeted inbound lead volume. And one of the ways I like to encourage people to think about that is to build a model based on when you've had some of the highest conversion rate performance in the past with the different channels that you've got and peak cycle time. What was kind of the handle time like? How many leads were these people managing when you were performing at your best? And from there you can build a model to say, okay, if those are my drivers, right, if that's what I want to see is the max that people are doing, and I load in more lead volume, how many people do I need, and what does the structure need to look like to manage that if I'm adding a channel, right? So you can use some of your historical data to inform your org structure and headcount and staffing model for the future. You want to avoid generalist positions as much as possible, depending on the size of the company. I've worked with some early stage companies where obviously everyone's wearing a lot of hats and there's a lot of generalists, right? And that's okay. As it matures, you want to create specialists that are cross trained. So in case you need to do coverage and that sort of thing, but you put specialists in their slots and they run those cadences, they run those sales processes, and there are experts in those areas, right? So you might have somebody that's an expert in managing live chat leads, but is cross trained to manage phone leads in case you have a staffing crisis in your call center, right? So the more you can create areas of specialization with cross training, the more effective your people are going to be. And then you want to create an org structure that inherently requires collaboration between sales and marketing, right? Some of the things I've seen in the past are by nature of the org structure, right? The departments are completely siloed and never talk to each other and don't have those opportunities in the way things are structured to collaborate. So how can you structure your organization in a way that promotes collaboration and partnership and in fact even requires it to work in the organization? And then I would suggest annually revisiting this as you think about what are my growth goals for next year? Is this model set up to support that? Or do I need to add another function here or add another way of working in the org structure? So as we continue down performance conditions, one of the next sections is operating procedure, right? So you've got your systems, you've got your structure, and now how are people going to work within it, right? So that's your operating procedure. I'm a big believer in service level agreements, SLAs, between marketing and sales teams. What's a service level agreement? If you're not familiar with that, what it is it really outlines how these teams are to work together, what's expected, who's accountable, right? What happens if we're not working in the way that we said we were going to work? So there's no surprises and teams know what to expect. I've even gone so far as in quarterly business reviews or annual kickoffs or whatever it is that you're rolling these out to have people review and sign them and agree to this is how we're going to work together as a unit. So really effective SLAs and include some of the following characteristics. You want clear lines of accountability for both lead generation and management. And that includes areas of mutual accountability, right? Communication pathways for collaboration and partnership when something's not working. So, hey, when we're underperforming, how are we going to communicate about this? What's the plan, right? And what can we expect from each other? Visual representations of lead generation and management processes. There's so much empathy that is created within an organization when one department understands how another department works and functions to generate that lead, and then how that other department works to manage that lead. So you're creating empathy, you're creating visibility, you're creating collaboration and partnership by putting visuals and workflows to this so that people can better understand how it works in the organization. Escalation protocols. So let's say marketing's doing all this great job, all these leads are coming in, and they're just sitting there and sales isn't moving on them, right? Or marketing is generating all these leads and sales is complaining about how they're not good quality and there's nothing we can do about it, and there's division that's happening, right, in the organization. So, and then people kind of go sideways sometimes and they start moving away from the SLA and working in a way that isn't productive, right? So, what you want to do is put escalation protocols in there for, hey, if these teams start to work in more of a divisive manner, what's our escalation protocol? What's the outcome so that people know what to expect on how we're going to handle that? And then you want to revisit this on a quarterly basis. How is it working in your quarterly business reviews? What's working? What's not working in our SLAs? How can we make it better? It's a dynamic document. And you want to establish a regular meeting cadence, right, with between these teams with a clear outline for how these leaders are going to collaborate. This includes weekly scrums, monthly operating reviews, quarterly business reviews, and kickoffs. These teams have to be working together. Otherwise, the SLA is just a document that sits on the shelf and collects dust. And someone's like, oh, yeah, they rolled that out sometime a few years ago. Right. So you got to operationalize this document by putting people in regular meetings so that they can use it together. Okay. So on the next slide, I'm just checking our time here. In performance conditions, we've got measurements. Now, there's you could do a whole webinar just on measurements here. Okay. So if you're interested in knowing what to track, in your sales organization, how to kind of connect it with what Justin's talking about, I would suggest reaching out to Justin or myself, and we can definitely dive in there. But you want to unite your departments through full visibility. I can't tell you how many times I've come into an organization and said, well, I actually don't know what the marketing metrics are, or I have no idea how sales is performing in this area. And there's no visibility across the department. So you want to create visibility so there's transparency and people can see how the entire funnel is performing. You want to increase your opportunity to optimize your performance in both marketing and sales with a few capabilities that are hard to achieve. One is full revenue attribution at the campaign level. So all the campaigns that Justin talked about, tying that all the way through the funnel, like he was talking about, to revenue, allows you to think about where you're spending your money, how you're spending your money, how to optimize it on the marketing side, and then how to optimize where the weak points are and how you're managing those leads, right? That's hard to achieve. It requires a lot of work on your technology stack to make things as precise as possible. You want to establish full visibility across every stage of the funnel. Justin talked about that already, and I would add to it by saying you can slice it in a lot of different ways. And here are some of the ways that I like to slice it, looking at by your campaign, by your score that's coming in for each lead, your channel entry type, even things like day and time and geography can start to give you information on how to think about what leads you're generating, how you're generating them. And then feedback loops. This is something that I've always appreciated in working with Dom is I'll bring them in, and a lot of agencies kind of operate in silo, and they're hungry for that feedback loop from sales, right? And looking at those KPIs further down the funnel. And so we've been able to create really nice synergies between sales leaders and what Justin's group does here to optimize the marketing performance based on what you're seeing in the funnel, as well as, hey, we got to put this in place because sales is mismanaging these quality leads, right? So the feedback loops are super, super important. So again, we could do a whole presentation on KPIs, but here's just a taste. I would say I'm a big believer in leading and lagging indicators, and trending them and looking at them on a trended basis. Here's some examples. When you think about leading indicators, think about in your sales organization, think about behavioral metrics. What's our ring time? How quickly are we answering the phone? What's our response time on forms? What are our reps adhering to the cadence task lists? Are they hitting their touch point quotas? Those are behaviors, right, that are going to drive outcomes like conversion rate between the sales stages, your sales cycle speed, how much return you're getting on your ad spend, that sort of thing. Your contribution margin and on your ad spend and your acquisition costs for customers. So we could have multiple slides on call center metrics and how do you track live chats and all these different channel entries and how to optimize your sales organization. But that's just a taste of structuring it, thinking about leading What are those behaviors that you're tracking? And what are the outcomes that you're tracking? And doing that in your technology stack in a way that your people get to react to it and take action on it versus spending all their time trying to figure out if it's accurate or actually get the data, right? So that's why that foundational piece on the technology stack is super important. Okay, so continuing down performance conditions. So now we've got the org structure, you've got the operating procedure, you've got your measurements, and now how are we going to actually work these leads? And also, how are we going to coach our people to work them more effectively, right? So, what you want to do is you want to establish a persona based, staged, and segmented sales process. So, what do I mean by persona based? In some of my healthcare organizations that I've worked with, what a doctor cares about is very different than what maybe a psychologist there cares about or a case manager at a hospital cares about. So depending on who you're selling to, you want to create personas that are really clear about how they make decisions. And then you've got a sales process that those personas move through, right? So you want to have stages and you need to segment your process with clear entrance criteria into the stage and exit criteria out of that stage. Put that in the CRM and make sure that your teams are actively working your leads through those stages. And you should be able to track things like conversion rates, like how fast they're moving them right through these stages, drop out reasons why people are dropping out, where people are getting stuck. So this is a critical piece of the structure and the process in which people work. And you can have many of them. You could have a whole sales process for how we're going to handle web forms that's different than a whole sales process for how we're going to handle leads that come in through your live chat or text, right? So you can have all different types of sales processes based on persona and based on channel entry. Also based on score, how you're going to handle grade A leads, right? On your ideal customer profile or grade B, that sort of thing. You want to implement call plans. What I mean by call plans are, okay, you're working this sales process. There's some significant touch points that are going to happen in certain stages in the process, right? That first phone call, maybe there's a second touch point that happens that isn't the minor interactions in between, but are the big ones that move the person forward. You want to have a plan for that, right? You want to create a call plan for your representatives to understand, here's how I work this touch point. Here's what my primary objectives are. Here's how I know if it was effective. Here's how I know if it wasn't. And here's what I'm working towards in this touch point. Right. And so then you want to, in your call plan, give people guidance on how to tailor that touch point to each persona. Right. So you've got your plan, and here's how I would do it with this persona or that persona. Right. And then you want to equip your coaches with a plan for how to effectively evaluate people in how well they're executing the call plan, right? So you don't want to just assume that coaches know what they're doing. You want to give them a call plan for how to measure your representatives' effectiveness at it, right? Scorecards. What are they looking at when they're riding along or they're call coaching or they're listening to calls? How are they going to score this touch point? And then give them guidance on if it scores in these thresholds or those thresholds. Here are the things to focus on to develop that representative, right? So you've got your process, you've got your touch points, and you've got your coaches that know how to evaluate and develop those representatives. And the last thing that I would say is typically in a lot of sales organizations, there's handoff processes between different sales teams. So maybe there's a team that handles initial reception that then passes to a team that closes, right? Those handoff processes are where a lot of times people fall out because those aren't handled very well. So you also want to have SLAs between the sales teams on how leads are expected to be managed when it goes from maybe an opportunity to an inquiry or whatever it is that you call it in your process. Okay, so looking at our time, we're almost done here. Building the best team. I think, again, this could be a whole webinar, but just being brief here, you want to create an ideal candidate profile for each position in the organization, similar to your ideal customer profile, right? So who are those people that you're looking for to enter into a collaborative sales and marketing team? You want to have consistent and fast interview processes that score candidates against that ideal candidate profile. And then I really believe in this. You got to have a consistent cadence for leaders to top grade their sales teams. So if you're running a contact center, that bottom quartile should not be sitting there for a long, 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 long time, right? So if you've got sales process, sales cycle plus a month, right? That should be your cadence for thinking about how are these people coming along in the coaching? Is there improvement or do I need to top grade the team? Right. And then you build your bench. So when I work with leaders, they'll say we're 100% staffed, and I'll say, what does the bench look like? Right. So we want to be consistently interviewing, even if our sales organization is 100% staffed. So that way you don't have those dips where you miss goals because you drop below something like 70% staff. Last slide here is retaining. So now you've built that team. How do you retain it? I'm a huge believer in defining your culture and then investing in a plan to operationalize it. Culture doesn't work if it's just things on the wall, right? You have to operationalize it. How do you reward it? How do you tell stories about it in your meetings, right? That sort of thing, in a regular cadence. You want to unite the growth engine, marketing and sales in a shared vision and mission that's beyond just revenue performance. A lot of people are financially driven. Absolutely. I think I don't really know anybody that said they're not in my life, but what are they a part of that's bigger than that, right? That they can feel connected to at a human level. That's going to get you a lot of retention. You want to build and implement career pathways and leadership development programs for people to continue to grow in their competencies, and as a professional. And then some people disagree with me on this, fire your highest performer if they're not culturally congruent. So if value your culture equally with performance. If someone's toxic, if someone's a cancer to your organization, but they're their highest performer, remove that person as quickly as possible. Right. So you want to be protective of your culture, and that's going to repel some people, and that's going to attract some others, and that's going to help you retain the best team. So we flew through those slides, but if you're interested in any of those areas, or if you just feel like, hey, I would love just an evaluation, right, of my sales organization and how it functions in those areas, you can reach out to me. Here's my email, and also if you scan this, you can get connected with me on LinkedIn. And I just appreciate Justin even inviting me to participate in this, because I think what he and I and his group have done together has helped companies accomplish this. So I would be very quick to also say Justin needs to be involved here too, as we look at the marketing organization, his group. So hope that was helpful to you.
Jordan, thank you so much. First of all, cannot agree more that if somebody's not a cultural match, it doesn't matter what they're producing. You got to get them out of the organization. It's going to force, you're going to see other people leave. It's going to cause other problems with the organization. I'm so glad to hear you say that. And just in general, I really appreciate everything that you've done. I don't, like everybody, I attend a lot of seminars. I attend a lot of webinars, and I don't get a lot of the transparency that you just shared with everybody in terms of how do you build the structure of something that's going to set you up for success. Sometimes you get little tips on things. Sometimes it's boasting about results or those types of things. So for you to share the nuts and bolts activities behind everything, I always learn from you. I learned more just listening again today. It just was so valuable. So thank you for sharing and being so open and transparent with everybody.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Justin. It's kind
Uh,
words.
yeah, absolutely. So one question that had come up, and Janice, I'll let you kind of jump in with any questions that you're seeing from people. But one question I know that I saw while I was listening to Jordan was about the slides. And yes, we will make the slides available for people so that you can peruse them in your own pace. And then there's links that you can follow up on that front as well. But Janice, open to you for any questions you had in the queue.
Absolutely. Thank you both. Great presentation. I have some questions here. First one going to Jordan. Can you describe a success story uniting sales and marketing organizations in a go-to-market strategy? And then in advance of that, can you also share some key drivers of the success?
Yeah. So I think one of the stories that I would tell would be actually one that Dom and I worked on together, which was coming into an organization that was very fragmented in those areas, right, that we talked about. So they were fragmented in their systems, they were fragmented in how marketing and sales were working together. And what we were able to quickly do was put systems in place, right, that allowed us to achieve full attribution on all of the efforts that were happening. And what we learned was that there was a lot of stuff that a previous marketing agency was doing that was really driving a lot of cost and not a lot of results, right? So that was the first thing. And then I would say, so the systems and getting that attribution was super important. The second thing I would say was that the sales organization really didn't have some of those fundamentals that we were talking about around how the leads were going to be managed from a process perspective. And so we put that in place so that the leads were more effectively managed. And we built an org structure at the bottom that was ready to handle the volume that Justin's team was going to pump in there. Right. So that was, we put a process and an org structure in place kind of at the same time, like building it as we would fly, right? But I would like to present it as linearly, right? So we did that first, while we were also in Justin's area. And Justin, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but thinking about all the things we need to do differently from the campaign level to generate more leads, right? So what ended up happening is Justin's group did their thing that they do so well and started generating a lot more lead volume, right, coming in through different channels, and we were able to score it and work it in a process with an org structure that was ready to scale with it. So I would say that was a huge success story. Revenue, I think, more than doubled that year, and it was a remarkable year in the company that we worked on together. But those were some of the key drivers, I'd say.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan.
And I'm sorry, real fast, Janice, I'll just jump in. The other thing that I want to recognize, to what Jordan was saying, there was so much good communication on the client that he's talking about, where, don't get me wrong, Jordan absolutely held us to the fire on things, right? No marketing agency ever delivers the exact same number of leads and the exact same quality leads from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday. And so when we weren't on track, it was like, guys, I'm getting a little nervous. What's going on here? What are you seeing? Hey, what's going on with this? And was so good about sharing feedback, but also sharing expectations, that it made it a really comfortable environment for us. So, and it never felt like a pointing fingers and a blame. It really felt like we were always on the same team with everything. So I just would, if you can get to that comfort level between the two sides, there's not an easy answer in how to do that, because it's involving building trust and everything else. But it just, I know our team wanted to work harder and enjoyed it more and was able to produce better results with all of that knowledge and the trust and the transparency between the two sides.
Very cool. Yeah, great points, Justin.
Thank you. Thank you both. We have about 8 minutes, a few more questions to get in here. What are the early indicators that sales and marketing departments are not working in unison?
So, I mean, Justin, I can share a few and then feel free to jump in if you want to. But my perspective would be, whenever I come in to an organization and we're in that kind of assessment or discovery period of time, and I hear things like, I don't know what sales is doing with all the leads that we're pumping in, right? I hear somebody make a statement like that. Or I see behaviors where people aren't actively moving on quality leads that marketing is putting in, and opportunities are sitting for something like 3 days. So those are behavioral things that people say, things that people do, right? How their meetings are set up, right? How their org structure is set up, right? So are these departments regularly in communication, and does the org structure and operating procedure facilitate that, right? So those are some of the things that I look at really early on, and some of them happen just by diving in and talking to the people, right? To hear those kinds of comments, right? Gives you visibility into that there's really no insight and collaboration and partnership between these departments, and they're very siloed, right? So those would be some, I would say, off the cuff early indicators that I've seen. But Justin, I'm curious if you have anything there too.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. I agree with all of those. That I think when there's a lack of transparency would be one thing, and information isn't getting shared tends to be a big issue. And then I would also say when there's a lack of specificity. So sometimes we'll hear things like, well, these leads just aren't good. Okay, can you tell us how they aren't? Like, are they truly just garbage, like they're fake email addresses, or is it that they really didn't hit our ICP, or they weren't, we really want enterprise, or they persona, like any of that specific feedback, when that's not being shared, because it makes it harder for us to do our job, because we want to do well. We want our companies to succeed. And I think there are, it's something you said, Jordan, that rung in my head was, when leads aren't being followed up on. And my team, and I hope we always perform to this level, but we always want to look inward first. What are we not doing as well as we can? So we're not coming in pointing fingers unless we're really pretty certain of something. We're starting with, hey, well, here's where we can do better. In fact, I just had a contact at a private equity firm came in and said, hey, your team's taking too much blame for things. I know that it's somebody else doing the problem. You don't need to stand up for yourself, because I don't want this to look bad on you later down the road. But there were times I can remember where, we're trying to figure it out. We're banging our head against the wall, and we finally get access to HubSpot or Salesforce or something like that. And then we see, to Jordan's earlier point, calls aren't being made in a timely manner. And we're like, we just didn't feel like we're getting a fair shot at things when it's not being filled up. But all of that can be figured out if you have that communication and transparency up front. But when you're in terms of leading indicators, when that conversation is not happening, then it's 3 months down the road, you've wasted a bunch of money and everybody's angry. So if you can just get everybody on the same page up front and try to trust each other, I think is what I would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's probably other questions, but I would say, because then you can actually develop the right action plan, right? So we're actually generating quality leads. We're not moving on them fast enough. Is that an org problem? Is it a structure problem? Is that a headcount problem? Is that a system problem? Is it a process problem where people don't know how to do it? So, and then you can actually attack it, right?
Yeah, it's that trap that's so easy to fall into. I know I do all the time, where if you aren't digging in to find out what the core actual issue is, it becomes really difficult to solve. So like you said, just digging in to find where are we breaking apart so that you can fix that particular issue.
We have 3 minutes time for one more question. Jordan, are there mistakes that you see most frequently that set up growth teams to work in silos?
Yeah, and some of them we were hitting on. I think communication is a big one, where there's not, where it's just kind of assumed that communication is going to happen, and it's not operationalized and documented into an SLA and how it should happen. I think that's a big mistake. The other one is, I think people underestimate the power of systems to facilitate collaboration, right? So I'll give you an example. There was one company that I worked with where all the teams were in Salesforce, but they weren't able to collaborate with each other because of the permissions, right? That sort of thing. So systems were not allowing people to actually communicate, right? So I would say systems is a big one. And then culture, I would say, is the last one. If you're not focused on operationalizing your culture and uniting these teams, there's going to be, division points that happen naturally.
Very good.
Awesome. So I think are we at time, Janice, or pretty close to it?
We have 2 minutes.
You want to take one more? See if there's something that can be answered a little bit quickly.
Let's go. Not sure if we can answer this quickly, but how are you seeing AI impact Google Ads or digital marketing more generally?
Great topic. Let me pick out one particular piece that I can do kind of quickly. I went through quickly a slide on exporting, one of my favorite topics. And what I would say on that one, there are some really, really neat tools that are out there right now. And so at our agency, we're of the belief that AI is a great tool. You still need humans in the loop, but that it's going to be a part of everybody's business with what you can do. It's just there's too many time savings to allow people to work on more creative, more impactful things. And so one of the tools that the head of our AI team, or the person that's leading those charges for us, presented to the group, he put together, and I didn't even know this was going to happen during an all hands meeting to demonstrate this tool. He took a video of mine and then ran it through a tool that translated my video and changed my lips so that it was moving in time with what was being said, and did it in my voice.
Wow.
And we even ran it by one of our team members is from Venezuela, and she confirmed that the Spanish was spot on and was right. And so just to think to take a tool like that and to be able to translate videos and being able to tell stories, to open yourselves up to new markets and translate that information. To Jordan's earlier point about having systems and operations in place, you need to think about how you want to do it. But just the fact that you can do this type of thing so much more quickly, so much more easily now, it's just about the power of your mind and how you want to put that, how you can be creative with it, and then how do you build those systems in place behind it. Sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
I was going to say that's very cool. Very, very.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited about this tool in particular. Janice, thank you. I know we're at time with that. I want to thank everybody for joining us. If you had left a question, we will follow up with you afterwards if we didn't get a chance to do that. I think we recorded all of those. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to follow up here. There's our contact information. And then on the previous slide, sorry, go back to it, contact information for Jordan. Please follow up, get in touch with him. And if we can help you in any way, please let us know. But thank you for investing an hour of your time with us, and have an awesome day.